Okay. LAO.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As you might recall, we did raise a concern regarding the contract bed level proposed in the January budget, and we thought that it could be reduced by tens of millions of dollars by bringing inmates back from out of state and putting them into state prisons. What the administration is proposing here, we think is a positive step in the right direction and does go a long way towards that goal. So we don't have any remaining concerns at this time.
Thank you. Finance. Comments or questions from the committee or comments from the public?
Craig Brown for the California Correctional Peace Officers Association. We're pleased to see this and hope that the second 4,000 come back in the next budget.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public? Okay. The motion would be to approve the May revision.
Madam Chair,
Aye.
Senator Anderson, Senator Bell.
Okay, we'll hold the roll open. That motion has enough votes to pass, but we will hold the roll open for the absent members. The next issue, number 4, is the activation of infill projects. Department?
Thank you, Madam Chair. As you'll recall, there was an original infill request which involved 252.3 positions and 35.6 million in budget year 2015-16, and then that grew to 518.2 positions and almost 68 million in 16-17 and ongoing to activate the level 2 dorm facilities at both Mule Creek State Prison and Richard J. Donovan Institution. The new facilities at those institutions will add 2,376 beds, including 1,584 at Mule Creek and 792 at Richard J. Donovan. This request involves 14.7 positions and nearly $1.8 million, designed to allow the department to add 264 EOP beds at each of the institutions. The 264 at R.J. Donovan will be EOP general population, and the 264 at Mule Creek will be for our EOP sensitive needs yards inmates. Activation for both facilities is scheduled for February of 2016, and I am still joined by Mr. Kernan, who's happy to answer any questions you might have about this proposal.
Oh, any comments? Finance, any comments? Well, I just want to remind everybody that when we passed the blueprint 3 years ago now, we talked about actually saving money for the people of California as well as increasing capacity. Many of us are very concerned that it appears as though it's really the people of California through the initiative process and the legislative process of 109 realignment that has led to a reduction in the population, but not a reduction in the budget. And I did send a letter to Secretary Beard last week urging that the infill projects, which were in the blueprint tied to the closing of the state prison at Norco, known as CRC, that connection needs to be maintained. That facility has recently, in the last few weeks, had a report come out from the Department of Public Health that is really shocking. It talks about cockroaches, rats, standing water in kitchen areas. It is an old, decrepit facility, and the community in which it's located would very much like to see it closed as well. In addition, I'd like to point out that there are, I believe, a maximum of 300 correctional officers there, and there are at least several thousand vacant correctional officer positions in the system. Therefore, no one would lose their job. And the state would realize considerable savings. again, I would remind everyone that when the blueprint was released, it was billed as something that would save us billions of dollars, specifically upon, and I'm reading from the blueprint, upon full implementation of realignment, the department's annual budget will be reduced by $1.5 billion through reduced expenditures associated with declining offender populations and new efficiencies. Well, we know we haven't seen those savings. And in spite of the best efforts of the people of California in approving initiatives to try to do that. And so I applaud the governor for bringing inmates home from out of state. But I believe that until we can reduce our prison budget commensurately, as the blueprint promised, we've only reached half of the durable solution that we seek. The state is facing huge needs: higher education, childcare for its children, water management for our drought-plagued areas, and we really need to be working on the promise of the blueprint being realized. So I am proposing that as we look at this item, we approve the infill projects because I think that they're needed, and that we adopt placeholder trailer bill language, reinstating the commitment to close CRC 6 months after the activation of those infill units. I don't know if the LAO or Finance have any comment on that, or if there's any comments from the public.
The department does, Madam Chair. Go ahead.
Okay.
Sue, want to go first?
Sure. You're 100% right that the blueprint projected that there would be 864 COSIP inmates in 14 and 15. And SB 105 authorized CDCR to increase the in-state and out-of-state beds to meet that 137.5, which was accomplished. The blueprint also assumed a CDCR population of 145% of capacity, and the court cap was established at 137.5 of capacity, about a 6,000 bed difference. 105 acknowledged the bad assumptions in the blueprint. SB 105 gave CDCR the flexibility to manage our population and avoid court order releases. As a result, it was decided to maintain CRC's nearly 2,400 bed capacity moving forward. No doubt the facility, built in 1962, is aged infrastructure. There's 1,130 employees at that facility and are running a safe and secure prison today. CDCR needs this capacity at this time, and given the uncertainty of the population that we've discussed today, losing this capacity at this time could result in court compliance reductions. We need to work with our stakeholders, including labor, to develop a long-term proposal in the fall, as we discussed, and CRC will be addressed in that plan. We've noted that there's 4,000 contract beds in the May revision. We need time to consider the complex population impacts and believe that the men and women at CRC will continue to operate that prison safely. As it relates to the environmental reports that you mentioned, Madam Chair, that is a report that we do on all of our institutions. And it's a transparent report to identify really non-infrastructural issues that are impactful. And so there's no doubt, as you said, that there's some alarming issues noted in those reports. As there is at many of our prisons, we haven't invested in our infrastructure and in our prison special repairs for a long time, as we could have. But CRC is not the worst in that regard. And so we have significant problems at many prisons. The department just believes that tying CRC to the infill projects, as you're suggesting, would put us in a bad position and offer an alternative to allow the administration to come back in the fall with a long-term plan that will address CRC. Thank you.
Okay. I'm wondering, I see someone is here from the receiver's office, Ms. Hayhoe. What I'm interested in is, number one, if it's true that Norco is no worse than other prisons, and also if the receiver has any estimate of what it would cost to bring it up to more habitable conditions.
As Mr. Kernan said, there are a number of institutions, especially our 12 original institutions, that are in different stages of disrepair. I would say that CRC is one of the worst, but there are other institutions that do have significant structural issues. In terms of how much it would cost to renovate CRC, I just needed to remind the committee that CRC is the one institution that does not have a medical infill project on the drawing board. So if CRC would to remain open, it would need to have medical repairs. We don't have a current estimate in terms of how much it would cost. Certainly, it would be tens of millions of dollars. I believe we did an estimate back in 2008, and at the time, I want to say it was maybe $80 million, and I'm not sure if my person's here, he's probably up in the assembly. It would be significant in terms of the cost needed to fix it.
Okay. Are there questions or comments from members of the committee now, or shall I'll take comments from the public?
Craig Brown for the California Correctional Peace Officers Association. We support the administration's plan to go ahead and examine this in fall as part of the overall look. This is a pretty rare institution that it's in Southern California. It's the California Rehabilitation Center. It has a culture and a practice of believing in rehabilitation. Some of our finest rehabilitation programs are there, and we support the administration's view that this ought to be examined in the fall. Giving up this site would be a maybe big mistake, and the fall process will allow you to have a good decision to make in January.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Jim Lindberg on behalf of the Friends Committee on Legislation of California. We support the proposed closure of Norco. By our math, we think that we can close it and still stay within the population cap. As you noted, it was part of an agreement. The expansion of infill beds was tied to the closure of Norco. Unfortunately, we got the infill beds, but we did not get the closure of Norco. We also think that there are other proposals here within the legislature that could help create further sustainable population reductions, such as expanding credit earning for milestone credits, expansion of elder parole, tightening up some of the loopholes around the alternative custody program, and so forth. These are ways to sustain a durable solution at far less expense and without creating harm for public safety. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I just want to make a couple points, going back to the blueprint. So as the department mentioned, the blueprint was planned around crowding institutions to 145%. We know that the final benchmark and ongoing cap is now 137.5%. So since the blueprint, that means that we are crowding institutions, thousands of inmates less in prison than we expected at the time of the blueprint. But not only are we crowding at a lower rate, but the department's being hit on both ends, because despite the best efforts of the initiative process, the 3-judge panel measures, and all of these population reduction measures that are in place, the May revision still projects the population to be over 129,000 inmates. And at the time of the blueprint for 2015-16, the population was projected to be at 122,000. So we're lowering the amount of crowding in prison compared to the blueprint, and we're dealing with more inmates than we projected to have at the time of the blueprint. So that has a huge impact on the prison system. I also wanted to note that due to the timing of infill being projected for February of next year and any language that requires CRC closure to be 6 months after that activation, we're talking about 2016-17 anyway with that closure. So we think it would be prudent to let the administration come back next fall with a comprehensive plan of how to address it, because we have identified ongoing in the blueprint, in the SB 105 report, and in the May revision that we recognize CRC is a problem. And like the department mentioned, it's one of many problems. It's likely the worst off, but we do need a comprehensive plan to address all of the problems throughout the system. And due to the uncertainty of the population projections for 2015-16 and ongoing, we think we need to take a longer look at what these trends are projected to do going forward. Because as a reminder, the budget includes a projection, or not even a projection, an estimate of below the line based on very limited trend data of a 1,300 average daily population impact from the 50% parole process for nonviolent, non-sex registrant second strikers. That's a big unknown in the budget where we don't know exactly what reduction we'll see out of that, as well as the projection in the May revision being 4,600 for the impacts of Prop 47. We're still in the very early stages of that. We know we've seen a faster implementation than we projected in the governor's budget, but we still don't know that we'll see the full 4,600 currently projected and whether there will be offsetting admissions that cut into that. On top of that, you have the standard 1% if the Office of Research's projections miss by even 1%, you're talking about another 1,300 inmates that could be off. So we think given all of the uncertainty, it would be best to come back with a comprehensive plan in the fall to address all these issues.
Okay, I think it's obvious why, just given the history of expansion of government or expansion of the prison system, that it's very hard for the legislature to vote for increasing the number of beds that were tied to the closure of a prison, but then have the closure of the prison not happen. Because that really means that commitments or projections are evasive, are so inaccurate that we can never project a situation where our prison budget would come down and allow reinvestment of general fund monies or simply cutting the state budget. And knowing that the department has been talking about many thousands of buffer beds, it does seem as though we could close Norco and relocate both the staff and the existing inmates at substantial savings to the state of California, and putting ourselves on a really stable footing for the future. They do say if you build it, they will come, and I'm very fearful we're going to get a multi-hundreds of million-dollar request to rebuild that prison, and it's of great concern. Because we cite the blueprint for the infill beds, we cite the blueprint for a number of other things. The blueprint made a commitment that tied the infill beds with the closure of that institution. So, and I appreciate the difficulty of doing it, and the doors might not close 6 months afterwards, but there's a process for closing institutions. We've been dealing with it in terms of some of the issues around our developmental centers, and it's always hard. And it is complicated, and it takes time to do it right. But I think, in my view, we need to get started doing it. The recommendation would be to approve the January budget proposal and the May revision request for the infill projects, and adopt placeholder trailer bill language reinstating the commitment to close CRC 6 months after the activation of the beds in the other institutions. And Senator Anderson has asked to have the motion in 2 parts. So the first part would be to approve the request for funding to activate the infill beds. Okay, please read the roll.
Madam Chair?
Aye.
Senator Anderson? Aye. Senator Bell?
Aye.
The second part of the motion would be to adopt placeholder trailer bill language, reinstating the commitment to close CRC 6 months after the activation of the infill beds. And we would be working on that language, which would come back to the committee. Is there a motion on that?
So I had a couple of
Oh,
comments.
that's Senator Bell.
Well, I had a couple of comments on the subject, so.
Okay.
Okay, I understand the changes that have taken place since the original blueprint. Okay, that's obvious. There's been a lot of changes. However, I think if you have a target, you ought to try to achieve the target. And if you don't want to go for that target, you have to explain why you're not going there. And I don't think you've made an adequate explanation of why we couldn't continue the process that we originally set in our original blueprint. Okay? So if you are going to bring this back in the fall, and you are going to present us with options, is that what's the intention of doing that?
That is the intention, Senator. We, for all the uncertainty that we discussed here, Prop 47, we think that in CRC, our commitment is that CRC will be part of that plan, but that we think that we need that capacity today, and ongoing. And we've previously said there's a lot of issues at that facility, so I certainly understand Madam Chair's concerns, but we are requesting that we come back to you all in the fall with a comprehensive plan that addresses a durable solution, including CRC.
Okay, so I'm for holding their feet to the fire like the Madam Chair is doing. So go along with that. But I have some things I would like to see in the trailer bill, if I could articulate.
Absolutely.
My basic problem with the way, the blueprint and the way we're approaching it is we're not keeping an eye on the prize, which is to reduce recidivism. So when I see these various options, bringing people back from Oklahoma or wherever, Mississippi, Arizona or whatever, what's the impact on recidivism of doing that? How will are the people that are placed in those facilities recidivating at a higher rate than somebody in the Norco facility, for example? Are you going to look at the various other facilities that we have? You say that Norco has a rehabilitation emphasis, and I respect that. I think that's probably a philosophy that I share. That in terms of the department. What's the result of that? Can you show me outcomes that have resulted from that work and effort that you put into that kind of program at that facility? How does that compare to the just buying beds over in some other state? Which one produces more? And I'm not familiar with the facility, I'll be honest, because that was I visited quite a few of them, but that's not one that I have visited. I'd like to go see it in terms of the facility itself. What other facilities are in poor shape, according that everybody can agree on, you, the receiver? What other facilities are on the list of facilities that are in poor shape? We should know that list. We should find out what are the low-level facilities in terms of ones that are going to cost a large magnitude of money to bring up to snuff and repair and so forth. And we should see that list. We should see what kind of information you have on that type of information on the physical condition of these facilities. Because quite frankly, we're going to make a decision based on, performance and outcomes. That's all I'm saying to you. And I like to see the information so we can make an intelligent decision here. But I think we got to put the feet to the fire because I see this as sort of it just moves around too much. You know, we have to say, okay, we're going to do this unless you can come up with a better plan. You know, that's basically what I'm saying. And the better plan has to show how the recidivism is going to go down, because that's really what I care about. Because I want to end the increase, and I think you have to show me how you're going to do that. If you can't show me, then this plan goes into effect, far as I'm concerned.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so that's kind of how I look at it. Because we will save money if we close this. Yeah, we will save money. And, that's important right now, given our situation at the state. So what other options are you even looking at? You're going to report you're going to present to this committee a report when?
In the January budget, we will come back with a durable plan that addresses the CRC issue. CRC is a level 1-2 dorm housing built in the 60s with 1945 Army barracks on it.
I understand
it is a prison, as the member of the public suggested, that is very focused on inmate programming. It's a dormitory style setting. As to your question about does it have more of a reduction in recidivism, I don't think I can answer that question for you at this point. That it's not broken out by prison. Certainly level 1 and level 2 inmates, we have a better chance of trying to address their criminal issues, and you'll see a lower reduction with that level of population. But the department has to balance all of its needs. Bringing the inmates out of state are level 2s and level 3s. We have to get the right kind of housing. Department of Finance mentioned the issues in the blueprint. I see it, the blueprint, the commitments that were made in the blueprint as evolving. I mentioned SB 105. We discussed those, the department and the administration discussed those changes when SB 105 was approved by the legislature. That gave us the ability to keep contract beds out longer. All we're simply asking is a chance to bring back a durable solution that will address all of our needs.
I don't have any information. I don't know what the answer is to my question about what facilities have the best impact, the bang for the buck on recidivism reduction, because that's what I'm looking for. I want to know what the bang for the buck is on recidivism reduction, because he's telling us the numbers after this year are a little worrisome in terms of the prison population. We want to go for a reduction in the counts. We want to go for the reduction. So where do we put our money to make sure that happens? That's what I'm sitting here representing my taxpayers that are paying a lot of money to fund everything in the programs, and a lot of them complain about it, okay? So they want to see some answers in terms of how they can get their bang for their buck to reduce the recidivism in the California prison system.
We want to see that reduction too, Senator, but what we don't want to do is create such a situation that we go below the 137.5 court cap and be put in a place where a court compliance officer is selecting inmates to be released. And so, again, why the department and the administration would like to come back with a
I'm not suggesting that, so don't put that in my mouth. I'm not suggesting that at all. Why are you saying that? I'm only saying that I'm telling you that I want to see bang for the buck. You have to show me, and don't say that I'm trying to release prisoners early, okay? That's not what I'm saying.
No, okay,
I didn't say that
everybody.
you were doing
We're not
that, sir.
gonna
I
have a
said the department
colloquy.
does not want us to get into a position where
That's
we're
not what
Right.
we're talking about here.
That's right. What we're talking about is there a blueprint anymore? Or did we throw that out with 109, in which case don't cite it as a need for other things in the budget? Or do we have a blueprint that is evolving, because every plan has to evolve with time? And are we diligently working in a transparent way to figure out how to meet those goals? Because Senator Bell is correct. We are all going home to our constituents. And I think you can tell from the way the initiatives have gone in recent years, people don't want to keep paying the huge percentage of their tax dollars that they do. They want us to rehabilitate. I'm really going to be very interested in looking at the programs at Norco and thinking with you guys, I hope, about how those kinds of programs can be replicated in other places. I mean, we're really working to bring some of the innovative programs from certain prisons like San Quentin to other prisons, and I will say the department's done a fabulous job on giving out those contracts and getting them in the field. I think they're going to make a difference. But the Norco, the infill link was very, very clear. So, as Senator Bell said, we need good reasons for it not to happen, or it really should happen. And I think that our system now has done a good enough job getting the population down, and we have so many vacant positions that this could be the time to do that. And I would think it would be very telling for the court in terms of that we are seriously doing what other states have done and bringing our population down and being able to close a prison. Which is only to say, I think Senator Bell has moved that we adopt placeholder trailer bill language, which will come back to the committee, reinstating the commitment to close CRC 6 months after the activation of the infill beds. Please read the roll.
Madam Chair,
Aye.
Senator Anderson.
Aye.
Senator Bell.
Thank you.
Placeholder language, or was it?
Placeholder language.
I made you split it. Is it too late for me to switch from aye to no?
No, it is not. I haven't done
thought you were
anything. I thought,
That was the whole exercise.
no. He got caught up in our wonderful logic. But nevertheless.
Very convincing.